everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, back again for the second consecutive day of AEW Dynamite Graded. Of course, the first episode this week was on that 1 hour late night Dynamite special, but this is real, this is full fat Dynamite, regular, ready salted Dynamite. And it was a bit of a chaotic episode of Dynamite as well, because when news broke that Lance Archer, now I'm confused whether he's either tested positive or has been exposed to somebody who's tested positive for COVID, but he basically couldn't appear on the show, which means that, of course, things had to change. Moxley was meant to be in a 6-man tag against Archer and 2 of his boys, and instead, very last minute, Tony Khan announced, no, it's going to be Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. So just changes happening all over the place. A few different people were absent as well, which has raised speculation that maybe they also have tested positive or have been exposed to someone who's tested positive. And still, they sort of pulled it together. So how good was Dynamite? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. That's right, it's time for AEW Dynamite Graded. We start things off with a big tag team match and Miro's in-ring debut in AEW. Himself and Kip Sabian teaming together to take on Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss. We get a little picture-in-picture promo as Janela and Kiss make their entrance, where Janela says, "Kip, you're about to make a big mistake. Not in this match, but in marrying Penelope Ford. I know what she's like, and this is a horrendous decision. But enough about that. Let's focus on getting another win for our team." And I quite like that, to be fair. I think that you do need to mention the whole background between Sabian and Janela, but at the same time, I'm glad that they're moving away from it and refocusing Janela slightly on just wanting to pick up wins for his team. And it's not long before Miro gets the tag from Sabian and he enters the ring and he's standing there all tall and powerful and thick and wide, and then Sabian tags himself back in because he wants to face Janela across the ring. You naughty teasers. Miro does eventually get the tag, heads into the ring and just destroys Sonny Kiss with a huge slam, a massive, I think it was like a Uranagi, right in the middle of the ring, and then just tags back out again. And I'm thinking, good, this is the formula you want from Miro right at the start of his run in AEW. Just have him show up, wreck house a little bit, and then stand on the apron and watch for a little while. Short, impactful spots spaced out around the course of the match. And as soon as I thought that, the match went in completely the opposite direction and everyone started doing moves on each other. At one point as well on commentary, JR says, Miro was trained by Rikishi and also received some coaching from Gangrel. And Rikishi's a great coach. Burn on Gangrel there, JR. Sick burn. Poor Gangrel. And at this point, the match starts to go off the rails slightly. So Miro enters the ring, charges at Janela, who low bridges. Miro falls out of the ring and lands on his feet, but kind of comes up limping on the outside. I still don't know whether he was selling it or whether he genuinely hurt his leg in some way. Anyway, the action all spills to the outside. Janela ends up over the guardrail, and Miro stands next to the guardrail on the other side, wanting to boost Kip Sabian over him onto Janela on the other side of the guardrail, right? That's basically what they're going for here. But it all goes wrong because what's meant to happen is that Janela's meant to counter the move, leap, and just clock Sabian in midair as he gets boosted over, which kind of happens, but they mistime it a bit, and Sabian just falls head first out of view of the camera, just disappearing from our view behind the guardrail, and it looks terrifying. The cameraman rushes over, we see Sabian just like a GTA wasted screen on the floor, and Janela blatantly audibly is heard as well going, "Are you alright?" And I can't really blame him for doing so. Things continue to go wrong as Janela tries to basically springboard off the top of the guardrail back into the ringside area onto Miro, but he slips and Miro has to catch him awkwardly, and oh god, it's all going wrong. Thankfully, it gets back into the ring. Miro isolates Sonny Kiss, drops Sonny Kiss with the macho kick, locks on the accolade, which is now called the Game Over, and that's the win. This gets a C grade. Man, I really wanted to enjoy this more than I did, especially because it was Miro's in-ring debut. Several problems here. All the botches didn't help, and they all seemed to come one after the other, which made them all stand out more because it was just a big botchy period of the match. 2, potential injuries. Hopefully Miro and Sabian are okay. Hopefully Miro was just selling, and hopefully Sabian didn't actually land on his head. He finished the rest of the match and seemed to be all there, so hopefully he's fine. And finally, the third thing that I didn't like was the way the match was laid out. As I mentioned earlier, I would have liked Miro to have just come in once or twice, destroyed people, gone back on the apron and just watched for a bit, keep his actions short in the match, let us get a sense of how powerful and strong he is, but largely, you know, don't let him cut loose right now. But he's immediately just taken part in a big, fast-paced, move-centric tag match, and I don't think it was right. Next up, we get a promo from Eddie Kingston, who of course is facing Jon Moxley in the main event for the AEW World Championship. He strides to the ring like Paul Heyman walking past Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. He just walks right past the lads who are exiting from the last match, gets straight into the ring, looks straight down the hard cam, and calls out Jon Moxley. And he calls out Moxley in brilliant fashion as well. He says, "We used to be similar. We used to be cut from the same cloth back in the day. Not so much anymore, because you went off and sold your soul to the devil and became a sports entertainer, and I stayed with the fighters and stayed true to myself." And then he just says, "Come on, Moxley, come out. Let's see what you've got." And because it's Jon Moxley and he never backs down from a fight, it's like when you call Marty McFly chicken. His music hits, he heads all the way down to the ring and just gets straight in Eddie Kingston's face, and they're just staring each other down. Referees come out to separate them, and that's the end of a very short, very simple, but very effective segment. Sadly, this is too short for a grade, but it really did get me hyped for the match. It got me so hyped, guys. I was sat in my bedroom just like, come on! Can't wait for it to go down. Next up, we get Hangman Adam Page taking on Luno of the Dark Order, with Kenny Omega once again showing up on commentary for his former tag team partner's match. Like an ex who swears that they're over you, but you always bump into them here, there and everywhere, and they're always making a big deal of how over you they are. It's a bizarre... I'll be honest, I've never been in that situation, so I don't know why I'm pretending. And once again, for the second Hangman match in a row, we learned that this was initially offered to Omega and Hangman as a tag team match, but Kenny turned it down. And fair enough, you want to concentrate on your singles career and stuff, but stop coming out for commentary spots then during his matches, Kenneth. It goes back and forth at the start until Luno uses the ref as a human shield and then gets the ref to unwittingly hold Hangman Page's leg, leaving him wide open for a neck breaker. And we all remember that Uno has a background in silly indie promotions such as PWG and Chikara. And while I don't mind a bit of that, I imagine on commentary JR is just seething. At one point, Hangman gets knocked onto the ramp and he is just surrounded by members of the Dark Order who've been there watching the match. And we hear Kenny Omega's cowardice on commentary because his boy's about to get jumped by like 5 other dudes, and Kenny's on commentary going like, I don't know, I can't be bothered. But thankfully for Hangman, he doesn't need to rely on Kenny to save him, because Luno, demonstrating once again sneaky sort of babyface traits that have been creeping into his game over the past few weeks. He just waves off the troops. He says, "No lads, I can do this by myself, get yourselves to the back." Then Uno gets a near fall off a lovely swanton bomb, reminding us all of his surprising agility, but Hangman fights back with his signature massive lariat, the standing shooting star press, but Uno gets the knees up and rolls him up for another near fall. But once again, because he is one of the most important characters in AEW right now and has main character plot armor, Hangman Page fights back, nails Uno with the powerbomb and the buckshot lariat, and picks up the win. I'm going to give this match a B+. It was nothing that we didn't really see last week, but it was a continuing reinforcement of those sort of ideas. Hangman still feeling regretful, but picking up wins. Kenny Omega being a bit of a bad friend on commentary, and basically Luno thinking about becoming a babyface. All those things that we already knew are continuing, and it was a good match. So B+ is the grade. Next up, we go to an interview that happened earlier in the day as Tony Schiavone heads to the Young Bucks locker room. He knocks on the door. He's very reluctant because they've been super kicking referees and Alex Marvez and stuff recently. Matt Jackson opens the door and does fake the super kick, and Tony's like, "What are you doing, mate?" And Matt Jackson's like, "Were you scared? Sorry, man. Sorry about that." Dick. Matt Jackson, in a very smug Young Bucks sort of way, admits that they've been acting differently recently. They shouldn't have superkicked that interviewer dude and that scrawny ref, and that they'll try really hard to be better in the future. But you have to understand that recently they have suffered, well, a loss of title opportunities and a loss of friendships as well. So they're feeling a little bit sour right now. Then Tony asks Matt about FTR, and Matt gets annoyed that he's asked him about FTR. So he demands Tony's phone, takes it off Tony, smashes it against the wall, and then throws a wad of cash at Tony to get an upgrade because he feels bad immediately afterwards. Oh, that is heelish behaviour, Matthew. No grade again for this one. It was a very short interview segment, but one worth mentioning. And oh, just a little botch there for those of you who like little mistakes in TV. At one point, Matt goes, "Come on, Tony, we're on live TV," but we're not, because we've previously established that this happened earlier on in the day, so check yourselves before you wreck yourselves, AEW. You've just been bamboozled. I'm not taking Ross's job. That was awful. Next up, we get Brodie Lee defending the TNT Championship against Orange Cassidy. And this was the big centerpiece of the show. This was where big things happened I'm a professional recapper of wrestling. Yes, I know it's hard to believe. So we get mind games to start the match. A lot of the Dark Order are ringside to watch and support Brodie Lee. John Silver just lays vicious boots to Orange Cassidy's jacket on the outside of the ring, and Anna Jay gets up on the apron to try and yell at Orange Cassidy, take him out of his game and distract him generally, but Cassidy doesn't get distracted. He just does a Bret Hart. He just takes off his sunglasses and kindly gives them to her and puts them on her face, and Brodie Lee is just not amused. Then we get Orange Cassidy's little kicks. He starts off the match with that, and the hands in the pockets, and the tiny little strikes, and Brodie Lee's just not playing around and just bang, lays him out fully in the middle of the ring. And for a while it seems like Brodie's just going to squash Orange Cassidy here, because he's not only just throwing him around with ease, he's also busting out dives as well. Like, Cassidy at one point tries to dive onto all of the Dark Order on the outside. They just catch him, and then Brodie dives onto all of them, kind of very in fitting with his character, really, taking out his own minions as long as it helps achieve his own aims. Brodie then goes for the discus clothesline, but Orange Cassidy faints underneath it or just slumps to the canvas, so Brodie picks him up again, goes for another one, and again Cassidy just falls beneath it. It becomes apparent at this point that Cassidy is not collapsing because he's so weak. He's kind of deliberately avoiding the move and playing possum at the same time. So Brodie goes for a third one, and the same thing happens. So now Brodie's really mad. So Brodie goes for the big kick to the skull, like that man who kicked me in the head when I was at university in an awful nightclub several years ago. But Orange Cassidy doesn't do what I did, which was take it full in the side of the head and go home because, you know, your night's over. He actually rolls out of the way and gets a roll up for two. Wish I'd thought of that at the time. And suddenly Orange Cassidy is all fired up. He heads to the outside and takes out members of the Dark Order by kind of just dodging around them like in Bugs Bunny fashion. They're clocking each other with belt shots, they're getting in each other's way. He heads back into the ring, goes up top, nails Brodie Lee with a leaping DDT off the top rope, and it seems like the momentum of the match has fully turned in Orange Cassidy's favour. Cassidy nails a couple of big punt kicks and then a tilt-a-whirl DDT, and then a jaw-dropping air raid crash on the much bigger man, but it's only good enough for two again. So he sets up for the Superman punch, or the Orange punch, I guess we call it now. Not a fan of that name. He runs, he charges, and John Silver gets in the way and takes the bullet for Brodie Lee. Brodie then nails Orange Cassidy with a huge powerbomb and a discus clothesline, and that's enough for the win. Aww. But after the match, the lights go out and eerie music starts to that kind of music starts to play, and there's mist and there's red lights, and it's like, what's going on? And then the voice comes over the speakers, wrestling has more than one royal family, and it's Cody it's Cody, he's back. But it's not just Cody, it's Cody Emo Edition. Yeah, this is like the Spider-Man 3 phase for him. He comes out, he's dyed his hair, not like his normal like dark brown, it's like jet black, he's wearing all black, and he looks very, very angry. Cody hits the ring and just starts taking out Dark Order members as Mr. Brodie Lee just leaves and heads to the back. Cody is left in the ring with Alan at 5 Angels, catches him with the figure 4 leg lock and keeps it on for, frankly, a rude amount of time, and then gets up and he's all fired up and everyone's buzzing to see him back. Well, one person who's not excited actually to see him back is Brodie Lee, of course, who later on in the night cuts a little backstage promo challenging Cody to a dog collar match at some point in the future. Ooh, that's very interesting. So this whole segment, the match and the aftermath, gets an A grade from me. The match told a really strong story. I loved the mismatch between Brodie and Orange Cassidy. And then Cody's return afterwards was genuinely quite dramatic and quite exciting. And also, he looks a little bit like a heel, which gets me very excited for the idea of a Cody heel turn at some point in the future. But we'll have to wait and see. Strong segment, strong middle portion of the show, and A is the grade. Next up, we get Matt Hardy and Private Party, who head to the ring, and everyone's chanting happy birthday at Matt, and I didn't realise it was his birthday, and I didn't tweet him or anything, and now I'm scared he's going to unfollow me. He's still there for now. It's all alright. Now, Matt is still selling the leg from when he was assaulted backstage last week, and he admits that he doesn't know who did it. It was a masked assailant. He says that he got into a fight with a lot of people backstage last week, a verbal fight, an argument, with the likes of MJF, Brodie Lee, and Chris Jericho. And he really does suspect Chris Jericho because he came along immediately afterwards brandishing that baseball bat. So here comes Chris Jericho to clear his name, flanked by Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. And then he reveals Sammy Guevara, who's returned from injury, which wasn't really an injury, but, you know, a kayfabe injury sustained at the hands of Matt Hardy at All Out. I don't like thinking about that match. Let's never speak of it again. Jericho denies jumping Matt Hardy from behind and said that if he wanted to do so, he'd attack him right to his face. Matt Hardy's like, why don't you just do that right now then? Him and Jericho go back and forth, and then Mark Quinn steps in and takes the mic from Matt and says, look, I'm going to deal with this, Matt, don't you worry. Because I laid out Chris Jericho last week, and and then Isaiah Cassidy takes the mic from him and goes, no, I'm going to deal with this. Don't you worry, guys. And I'm just thinking, make your minds up. Isaiah Cassidy issues a challenge to Jericho next week, and Jericho looks intrigued. He eventually accepts, and Cassidy says, you know, there's no pressure on me here, but there's pressure on you. Because what if you lose to me next week and become my Le Champion bitch? Which isn't clever wordplay, but he said it with feeling, so I still accepted it. This gets a B grade. There were a few verbal flubs here and there from, Matt and the quite inexperienced private party. However, the feeling was there, and I'm enjoying the booking. We've seen the spotlight on Mark Quinn before, and when he laid out Jericho last week, I thought we were going to get Quinn versus Jericho. Now it turns out it's going to be Cassidy versus Jericho. I'm quite into it, although it may eventually end up being Quinn versus Jericho once Jericho's beaten Isaiah Cassidy, but I'll reserve judgment for now. Next up, we get FTR and Tully Blanchard in the ring with Tony Schiavone, and Tully gets the mic from Tony and says, look, I've changed things a little bit around here, and you're all going to like it. Because usually, with World Tag Team title matches, there's a 60-minute time limit, but I've managed to wrangle the contracts a little bit and change them around, and now we're going to be able to get 20-minute TV tag title matches. And I'm like, okay, this is a decent idea. I'm liking the idea of seeing more FTR on my weekly TV show, I suppose. And Dax Harwood calls it a brush with greatness, saying that, they get a little 20 minutes in the ring with FTR, these other teams, to see what they can do. They point out that they get to pick the opponents, and they pick SCU for next week. And then Tully says, which seems like a bit of a minor thing, he says, and by the way, if we don't lose, but they don't win, we still get a check in the win column. And I'm like, Tully, why are you bragging about that? That's quite boring. Like, I know the title doesn't change hands, but I don't know if it should count as a win for you either. That was a weird bit for me, and I still don't quite get it. Is it an old school thing? I don't know. Then they start thinking, right, we've got SCU next week. Who do we want after that? Well, there's a lot of tag teams around, and they get cut off by the music of Best Friends, who get a big pop after their heroics in that parking lot fight last week. They come out, Trent says, what we did last week wasn't a match, it was a war. Let's go right now, we're ready to go. And FTR get all their jackets off and stuff, they're all ready to go, they're in their gear. And then they bail and say, no, you're clearly not in the right sort of condition. We want to face you at your best. We'll see you later on. Incredibly frustrating, but also, I think, an effective heel tactic. Chuck calls them a pair of weenies for running away, so American, and just hugs Trent aggressively in their direction to close the segment, which gets a B- because it was largely good, but I found some of it confusing. Now, on the positive side, I enjoyed the idea of seeing more FTR matches on Dynamite, and I enjoyed them weaseling out of a confrontation with Best Friends out of just pure arrogance, but I didn't enjoy their whole presentation of Tully's special rules and everything. That didn't come across as groundbreaking to me as they wanted it to seem. And also, this was the second fairly long promo, talky, war of words segment in a row, and I think it might have come across just a little bit tiring by this point. But B- is the grade. Looking forward to that match with SCU next week. Next up, we get tag team action as the NWA Women's Champion Thunder Rosa teams with the AEW Women's Champion Hikaru Shida to take on Ivelisse and Diamante. And the heels jump the faces to get the advantage before the bell. The match starts properly, and there's a bit of a miscommunication between the two heels. They can't work out which one of them is the legal woman, and it gets a bit awkward. But eventually things settle down, and the match becomes kind of a regular one. But it's a little bit disjointed as well, it feels. At one stage, a miscommunication between the babyfaces leads to Thunder Rosa just nailing Hikaru Shida with a jumping knee, and you think that Shida's going to get pinned, but she just manages to kick out at 2. Thunder Rosa takes Ivelisse to the outside. They're both pretty keen to throw the other one out and seem like the aggressor, and it's a bit awkward and it makes both of them seem a little bit But back in the ring, Shida hits the Falcon Arrow on Diamante. Ivelisse gets back in the ring just in the nick of time to break it up, so Thunder Rosa throws her back out of the ring once again, and then Shida hits the running knee to Diamante, 1, 2, 3. And the faces win. This gets a C+ grade. It wasn't a bad match, it was just quite a short one and a bit of a disjointed one. And you could tell that not everyone was totally happy with it. Like, Thunder Rosa looked a bit angry afterwards too. Next up, a little short backstage segment before the main event. Jericho is hyping his match next week with Isaiah Cassidy, but he's interrupted by MJF. They kiss each other's butts for a while and then both say simultaneously, "You're a great guy." So why did you call me a loser? That's a reference to last week, and I enjoy how they both watched the product and saw that they'd called each other a loser. That was pretty funny. They both make excuses. MJF says, no, I was calling all limo drivers losers because they nearly crashed into each other. And Jericho's like, I did get a spot of latte on my fancy pants, so that would have been really bad. Also, I wasn't calling you a loser, I was calling Skiavone a loser, and they're both like, that guy is a loser. They make up and they head off after saying, you're alright, you're alright. And they go in opposite directions, and it gets no grade because it was short, but it was really funny. And in the most heelish, awful, hateable way, strangely wholesome as well. And finally, we get the main event, the relatively impromptu AEW World Title match between the champion Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston, who does have a claim because he never got officially eliminated from the Battle Royale, but also, it's just a bit of a nice matchup, isn't it? I'm expecting just an all-out brawl to start this match off, but it starts off a little bit technical and a little bit tentative for about 1 or 2 minutes, and then Kingston just starts chopping and slapping Moxley and throwing him outside the ring into the timekeeper's area, overturning the timekeeper's table onto Moxley and talking so much trash in the process. Moxley fights back and nails a piledriver in the ring, but they're slightly too close to the ropes and Kingston gets his foot on the bottom rope to break the pinfall attempt. They head up top, Moxley's hitting elbows, but we get a callback to his previous injury to the elbow, and it kind of costs him a little bit. He kind of jolts back up and then falls victim to a big powerbomb from Kingston for a 2 count. Really nice stuff. At this point, Kingston really fires up and just starts nailing strikes and kicks and chops and slaps. That koala influence is very evident, but with lots of trash talk, as I mentioned previously as well. But he goes for the back fist, the spinning back fist that often finishes his matches. Moxley gets the hands up, blocks it, sleeper hold is applied, transitioned into the bulldog choke, and Eddie Kingston loses the match. I'm as heartbroken as you are. Kingston is out. I don't think he tapped out actually, but he's definitely out, from the bulldog choke. And then the Lucha Bros charge the ring and lay out Moxley with a double super kick, and the beatdown is on. But here to try and even the odds is big Will Hobbs, who I felt bad for because obviously his big match got cancelled this week because Archer wasn't there. But I'm sure Hobbs will get a big chance in the future. He rolls into the ring, Phoenix charges at him, Hobbs with a huge spine buster to Phoenix. I think backstage somewhere, Arn Anderson shed a tear. But still, the numbers advantage is too much for the babyfaces, especially now that Kingston's recovered and back on his feet and joining in the beatdown. So here comes Darby Allin with his skateboard to just start laying people out and really turning the tide of the brawl in the favour of the good guys. But just when you think the babyfaces are going to stand tall to end the show, here comes Ricky Starks with Taz in tow. Starks hits the ring and just folds up Darby Allin with a beautiful spear. Really nicely done, nice sell by Darby, great execution by Starks, and the heels stand tall to end the show. This gets an A- grade from me. Could have and should have been a lot higher probably. It felt quite short and rushed at the end, but I could easily have watched these two go for half an hour, so that's probably why I feel that way. The post-match stuff was good as well. They kind of had to scramble an ending of the episode together, you feel, because of the last-minute changes to the show. However, it was still entertaining, so A- is the grade. But what did Dynamite get overall? Well, it gets a B+, and often I do give Dynamite a B+, but that's usually because of consistency throughout the show. This was a bit of a wild ride to get there, lots of ups and downs in this one. We started off with that tag match, which unfortunately had quite a few botches in it, hopefully everyone's alright. But then we had some high points, like Cody's return, and the main event as well, which I was a big fan of. It all kind of balances out to a B+, I think, but it's not been as strong as Dynamite has shown itself to be in recent weeks. Still, I can kind of understand because of the last minute changes that had to be made. And that's it for this week's episode of AEW Dynamite Graded. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. Stay safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you very soon.